Welcome to Dark Facade, a channel dedicated to looking past the veneer of humanity and finding its true face. I will be your tour guide down this winding path of tales, ranging from the supernatural, science fiction, and twisted love. All the stories you're about to hear are assorted bits of literature that will range from the bizarre to the unexpected. So sit back, lower the lights, and allow yourself to be taken away from everyday reality to its shadowy reflection. If you enjoy our unusual content, please be sure to hit the like and subscribe button to receive more. Thank you. The Book of Dark Names by Katie Rogers, read by Katie Rogers. Chapter 2. Daniel Sims moved briskly towards the baggage claim while his wife, Anna, waited nearby. They had just flown in from Chicago to help their old friend and fellow psychic, Laura Blaine, with her current case. They had all known each other since they attended college at Northwestern. Laura was a young, fresh-faced blonde from Connecticut studying criminology. Daniel was a black pre-law student from the outlying suburb of Joliet. When he and Laura first met, it was not their surface differences that attracted their attention to one another. It was the similar energy they gave off. He sensed in her what she did in him, which they later called the psychic connection, for lack of a better description. Over the next 4 years, they ended up finding more like themselves and forming a group. Laura's talent for finding things came in as handy as Daniel's ability for reading minds. Unlike her, however, psychic capability ran in his family. While Laura had to discover her own aptitude, Daniel had the advantage of a teacher. His mother was also a mind reader. She had recognized the gift in her oldest child when he turned 12. That was when it had taken root in her. Over the next few years, she taught her son how to shut out the voices of other people's thoughts and how to hone in on the ones that he wanted. Thanks to her tutelage, he was able to carry on a fairly normal existence with such an ability. He was certain, however, that it was not his skills in particular that had brought them all the way to Los Angeles. Cody Moran's disappearance had been all over the news. Laura had gotten some media attention after word got out about her involvement. Unlike the rest of the world, Daniel knew his old friend had already solved the mystery of the girl's whereabouts. Every time the camera surrounded her, Laura would simply say she was continuing her investigation. Even though he could not read her mind through the television screen, he knew his friend the PI had found the missing heiress. This led him to the conclusion that there could only be one reason for her not producing the girl and collecting her paycheck. Wherever Cody Moran was, she wasn't able to get to her. If that in fact was the case, she did know someone who could. Daniel's wife, Anna, was the most uniquely gifted out of the group. Anna could transcend dimensions and once in a while speak to those that inhabited these places. More times than not, it was a gift that was very troubling and certainly extremely dangerous to use. Anna had not been born with her ability. She had acquired it after falling through the ice at a skating party for her 6th birthday. She had been declared dead on arrival at the hospital and was taken to the morgue. She remembered waking up at the funeral home later, right before they were going to embalm her. From the bits and pieces she told her husband, this was where she discovered her talent. Whatever had happened to her while she was gone, she could not bring herself to talk about fully, not even with him. This had been all right with him, though, because the fear in her eyes whenever she did try to discuss it was enough reason to shut down the conversation. Perhaps one day she'd permit him to enter her mind and see for himself. Until then, he'd leave it alone. Anna's long black hair was the first thing he saw as he made his way through the crowd. She was engaged in a conversation on her cell phone. When he got closer, he was able to discern it was Laura on the other end. He leaned in and softly kissed her cheek as she concluded her exchange. "So is Laura here to pick us up?" he asked. "Yes, she is," Anna replied while taking his free hand in her own. They had only brought one suitcase because Daniel could not stay long. He was one of the top defense attorneys in Chicago. He'd never lost a case and always proved his clients innocent. Mainly because his clients were innocent, and his ability gave him an extreme advantage to prove it. Laura had been instrumental in helping him with a lot of his cases. She had found important evidence that he needed to win. When she came into view, he probed her mind and discovered his instincts were correct. Today she was going to call in some of those favors. Daniel watched his wife embrace their old friend as he loaded their suitcase in the trunk. She had no idea what Laura was about to ask her to do, and it pissed him off. Anna was his life. He loved her more than anything. As he sat stewing in the back seat, his mind wandered back to the day he first saw her lovely face. Fall semester was just about to start on Northwestern's campus, and it was crowded to say the least. Like most of his fellow students, he was scrambling to get the last of his textbooks before classes began. The campus bookstore was a madhouse, but he was able to maneuver through it without too much trouble. After he collected the last few things from his list, he headed towards the registers to check out. His stack of books was so tall and heavy he did not see the young lady who stepped out from one of the many shelves. The two collided into one another like a couple of freight trains. Daniel fell backward, spilling his books everywhere. Frustration consumed him as he hastily tried to collect them all back together. "I am so sorry. Are you all right?" a young woman asked as she knelt down to help him. Yeah, I'm fine," he answered irritably. "Oh, good. Here," she sighed before handing him the small stack she had gathered. "Thanks," he replied, then froze at the sight of the beautiful creature that was holding them. She had thick black hair that came to her shoulders and flawless dark skin. Her full lips curved into a perfect smile as she watched his eyes explore her curvaceous figure. "Hello, I'm Anna. Anna Rodriguez," she said to her stunned admirer. I'm Daniel Sims," he stuttered. "Nice to meet you, Daniel," she grinned. "Pleasure is all mine," he said. "So how about I buy you a cup of coffee to make up for the mess I made here?" she asked. "I'll settle for nothing less than dinner, and I'll pay," he insisted. "Yes, well, the whole point is for me to make this up to you," she laughed. "Then I guess you'll just have to agree to have dinner with me for a while then." "Huh," he said. "I guess so," she smiled. As the two of them got to know each other better, they recognized their connection. They were both blessed with psychic ability. But their pull to each other went beyond that. Daniel was already smitten with the lovely Ms. Rodriguez, and when he sensed her attraction too, he could not believe his good fortune. Fair or not, part of him was angry at Laura for what she was about to ask. She knew as well as any of them how risky it was for Anna to use her ability. He decided when she finally came out with it, he was going to say no, and he hoped Anna would too. As she pulled away from the curb, he began his line of questioning. "So, Laura, what have you been up to?" he asked sarcastically. "Well, as you both know, I'm working on Cody Moran's disappearance," she replied. "Yes, it's all over the news," Anna nodded. "So, guess you haven't found her yet," Daniel said, attempting to draw out the truth. "You already know the answer to that, Danny," Laura told him. "Yeah, I do," he admitted coolly. Will someone please let me know what's going on?" Anna laughed nervously, sensing the tension. "She knows right where Cody Moran is, but she needs your help to get her back," Daniel announced angrily. "Come on, Dan, how many times have I helped you?" Laura argued. "Yes, me. You've helped me. But I am not the one you want a favor from, am I? Look, the girl is trapped, and Anna is the only one that can get her out." "Well, I'm sorry about that. To be honest, though, I don't think she's a real loss. Do you?" he snapped. "Daniel!" Anna gasped. He glanced only a moment at his wife before returning his gaze to Laura. "Listen, I know you don't want Anna to do this. I also realize that Cody Moran is the last person anyone would try to save. But we all agreed if we could use our gifts to help, we would," Laura reminded him. Anna placed her hand over her husband's before giving Laura her answer. "Of course, I will do whatever I can," she murmured. She stopped Daniel from raising any objections by squeezing his fingers softly. When their eyes met, he knew her mind was made up and no amount of arguing would change it. He relented with a sigh, then asked Laura when and where she wanted them to go. "As soon as possible," she answered. "Cody's energy is fading fast. I fear if we don't act soon, our window of opportunity will be closed for good." The drive to the Moran mansion was a long, silent one. Anna was trying to prepare, but the tension between Daniel and Laura was making it difficult. Despite everything, she understood her husband's concern. Whenever she reached into the other dimensions, she risked getting pulled in herself. She had seen some of what lay beyond the world, and most of it wasn't good. This mirror that had Cody held prisoner was probably no different. Anna still felt she had to try. She could not live with herself if she didn't. As the car came to a stop outside the front door, she felt a heaviness come over her. It was the sort that one feels before a great storm, except this was 10 times worse. The intensity grew with every step closer she got to the house. She noticed that Daniel and Laura were also affected by it in their own ways. Without having to be told, she knew which window belonged to Cody's bedroom. She could see a dark, dim, red light emanating from it. They were met at the door by Kaylee Moran's assistant and were taken directly up to the wardrobe. Mrs. Moran was standing across from the mirror. Her eyes were searching its silver glass for answers. She looked over at the strangers who were following Laura Blaine up the stairs and wondered which one of them was going to be her daughter's savior. "These are my friends, Daniel and Anna Sims. They have agreed to try and help Cody," Laura told her. "Mr. Sims, I believe our paths have crossed before," the matriarch declared. "Once or twice in court," he replied abruptly. She smiled knowingly at the attorney who had curtailed some of her family's shadier dealings. Laura knew that for Daniel to come along today was asking a lot. Anna decided to intervene and get everyone present back on task. "Mrs. Moran, I'll be the one to assist your daughter. I cannot guarantee success in any way, but it is important that while I'm attempting to do so, everyone stays clear," she explained. The lady of the house quietly nodded before stepping aside. Anna cautiously approached the looking glass and closed her eyes for a moment. The vibrations came out at her all at once. They were so powerful that they were starting to give her goosebumps. She tried to get a fix on Cody by sorting through them. As dangerous as it was for her to reach through any dimensional doorway, it doubled if she did it blindly. Thankfully, Cody's energy would be foreign to the place, and so it would be easy to locate. When Anna finally got a sense of her location, she opened her eyes. The mirror had changed in appearance. The deceivingly reflective surface was gone and was replaced with a blackness that revealed its true purpose as a doorway. Anna ran her finger down the center, trying to gain Cody's attention and draw her near. If the vibrations were correct, she wasn't far away. The young woman appeared almost immediately and began banging on the barrier as before. Anna understood the girl's desperation, but she needed her to be calm. She reached out mentally to her again, trying to convey a sense of comfort. The soothing energy settled over the heiress, and she calmed down. Anna was now able to concentrate her efforts on penetrating the barrier. When the barrier seemed at its thinnest, she reached through and took hold of the young lady. Cody held tight to her human lifeline. Freedom was just a pull away, and she was not going to miss it. As the young woman began to emerge from one side to the other, Anna sensed a powerful energy speeding towards them. The calm that she had managed to pass on to Cody soon vaporized when the party girl saw what was coming. "Hurry up! Pull me through!" she screamed as she dug her nails into Anna's arm. The pain broke her concentration, causing the barrier to thicken. Cody's screams of desperation did nothing to help the situation. Anna was doing her best to hold it together, But the more the girl panicked, the harder it was. The energy that was drawing near was a dark and terrible one. She had felt it long ago when she had been lost on the other side. Though she was consumed with fear herself, she knew she had to regain control. If she didn't, the girl would be lost for good. "What is going on? What's happening? Cody? Cody, can you hear me?" Mrs. Moran shouted as she tried to force her way over to the mirror. Laura quickly stepped in front of her to block her path. "If you want your daughter to have a shot at getting through, you have to stay back," she told her. Daniel sprung into action and came up from behind his wife. The barrier was thin enough now that he could reach through to Cody's mind and try to control her. The task proved to be more difficult when he saw through her eyes at what was coming. A creature that walked upright like a man but was not a man at all. What it was he could not say for sure, but what he sensed from it was darkness, fear, and pain, and it was heading straight towards them. Daniel quickly blocked the image from his mind, and by doing so, blocked it from hers. Cody's grip loosened and allowed Anna the split second she needed to regain control and finish pulling her through. The heiress tumbled out of the mirror and fell on top of her rescuers. She jumped to her feet abruptly, not quite sure if she was truly free. Kaylee took her wayward child in her arms and held her as she used to when she was little. She looked over at the trio of psychics who had freed her child and whispered, "Thank you." Needless to say, the mirror passed into Laura's custody. There were still many questions that needed answered. The main one was who sent it to Cody and why. The girl, however, was in no frame of mind to have such a discussion, at least not now. After Laura received payment for all of them, she loaded the mirror and her friends into the car. The silence between all of them was short-lived, as Laura had been asked to present her friends with a proposal. "I'll be going back to question Cody about the mirror in a few days," she began. "Yes, I'm a little curious to know where she got it from," Anna replied. "You guys know this thing is the Narcissus mirror, right? It is one of the most cursed artifacts in occult lore. I know it may not be unusual for a billionaire party girl to have it, but it seems unlikely. My hunch is someone gave it to her as a gift. Someone who knew exactly what was going to happen," Laura observed. "Yeah, probably," Daniel agreed, sensing there was more to come. "Mrs. Moran wants me to find out who did it." "Okay, and?" The suspicion in Daniel's voice made Laura pull over to the side of the road so she could focus on presenting her case. "Kaylee wants us all on the case. She said to name your price." "Well, you can tell Kaylee we're not interested," Daniel stated flatly. "You're kidding, right?" Laura laughed in disbelief. "Do I look like I'm joking?" he asked irritably. "Danny, come on, we can't leave it this way," Laura argued. "What way is that, Laura? You know as well as I do this isn't over." "I don't know what you're talking about," he lied. "Yes, you do, Daniel. You above everyone know exactly what I'm talking about," Laura spat. "It doesn't matter. We're not doing this," he answered crossly. "I've never known you to back down from anything in your life, Daniel. That thing must have really scared you," Laura said before turning around to start the engine. "You're right, Laura. That thing scared all of us, especially me. I've seen this thing before. I saw it when I died and was trapped on the other side. I believe it's the reason I came back. I know it's the reason." Though Anna had barely spoken above a murmur, her revelation resounded loud and clear. Laura turned back around to face her friend, whose dark eyes were now consumed with anxiety. "What are you trying to tell us, Anna?" Daniel asked. "I'm saying that this thing came after me as a child, and it scared me so bad I literally ran back into my body to get away from it. I don't know if I've encountered it again for a reason or coincidence, but I'm certain that Laura is right. It won't end here." "You're going to help her, aren't you?" Daniel sighed as he stared out the window in defeat. "Yes, but I won't ask you to," Anna replied. Her husband gave her a look she was all too familiar with before telling Laura it seemed they were all in. Anna laid her head softly on Daniel's shoulder as Laura pulled back out onto the highway. She smiled softly as she felt his strong arm pull her in closer. Daniel was no coward. She knew his fear stemmed from her nearly being lost. In fact, the only time Daniel Sims was ever afraid was when someone he loved was in danger. Some might say love was his Achilles heel, but it was a noble weakness to have. She kissed his face softly before whispering into his ear, "I will be careful, Danny. I promise."